Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Soul Focus Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and I am again joined by Dustin Washington. How you doing, Dustin?
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
Yep. Thank you for doing this part two. I was so fired up by part one. I'm like, we've got to do a part two, and we've got to do it right now, right? So we've already done our check-in for today, so let's jump into it, all right?
Sure thing.
So, one of the ways I look at the world is I always think about what are other people thinking, right? So maybe that's a character flaw, maybe that's ego in me. Sometimes I think it's what makes me good at some of the things that I do, but I'm thinking like, what are a lot of the people that tuned into this, what are they thinking? Like, here we are, we're discussing this thing that happened and we haven't focused hardly at all on what was wrong with the people doing the storming of the Capitol, right? They
Mhm.
did some really messed up stuff. People died, right? So
Right.
the narrative has been to just hammer them and hammer Trump, impeach him for a second time, something that's never been done, like punish him, the call to expel the Congress people that have, upheld what we certainly believe is falsehoods, but what a lot of people don't around the fraud in election and all that stuff, right? So you and I have barely talked about that, and that's one of the things that's on my mind right now. Like, I think a lot of people are like, why aren't they going at the people that did these horrific things, right? So why aren't we, Dustin? That's my first question for you in this part two. Why aren't we going at those people the same way we're talking about like the responsibilities of the left, if you will?
Well, I mean, I think fundamentally this is a right wing country, right? And so I think everything is tilted to the right. So, people, that's just the folks that would be the ones going after them. Everything has been tilted so far to the right that, you know, they're in line with that stuff in many ways, Martin. But as you were talking, one of the things that came forward, if you don't mind, just really want to share this thought because it just really hit me, is that those people who are out, engaging in that riot at the U.S. Capitol, one of the things that we all have not locked into is on one level they recognize that this society has lied to them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that Donald Trump, like, I think Donald Trump is all the things that we all know that he is. Right. Absolutely. But one of the things talk about a wicked genius. He tapped into a truth in spite of his ego. He tapped into a truth that this country has been based on a lie. And those people realize that they have been lied to. You know what's fascinating, Martin, about this whole discourse, right? And so people want there to be a certain level of decorum, right? And of course, we all disdain violence, right? Once we get back to, because everybody's like, we want to get back to normal, right? Joe Biden's going to bring us back to normal. But we ought to be questioning what normal has been in this country. I mean,
Right.
normal has been lynchings. Normal has been the wealthiest nation in the world having children go to bed hungry. Normal has been war after war after war. Normal has been environmental degradation. Normal has been Black women dying in the healthcare system because of racism. I mean, normal has not been healthy. Now, because we live in a white cultural framework, everything is dichotomous. So it's either, this kind of fake decorum, if you will, or it's this rabid, right wing kind of madness, right? But there's a
Right.
great space in the middle, and we don't tend to work within that middle space. But normal is not healthy, has not been healthy. And so just having Joe Biden, and if you look at Joe Biden's history, I mean, he's a globalist. I mean, he's supported, these trade agreements that have been devastating to working people in this country. He supported the mass incarceration of Black people and Latino people and poor people in this country. Normal has not been good.
Mm-mm. It hasn't. It really hasn't. And like you said, all we do is just swing back and forth, right? It's not even every 4 years now, it's every 2 years. Like every
Yeah.
2 years, there's this like the blue wave, the red wave, right?
Right.
And I think, I believe so strongly in this. You and I talk about this all the time. This is a huge tenet and philosophy of the Soul Focus group is modeling, like us practicing what we are asking other people to do, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the question becomes the reason why we're not focusing on everything wrong with another group of people is like we haven't gotten it right. What are we modeling? What
Right.
are we? And I'm saying like we as progressives, we as the left, we as anti-racist folks, anti-racist white folks like myself, anti-racist, Black folks, people of color like yourself. What are we modeling? What have we done? What have we achieved, collectively that we can uphold? I would say I don't see it. Like, I think things get better in certain ways. I think things get worse in certain ways. I'm going to be really honest. I didn't think things would be as hard on certain groups of people as they were under Trump. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. And I also know that things weren't great for those same groups of people under Obama, and they
Exactly.
won't be under Biden, right?
Exactly.
So we have spent so much time looking at what's wrong, and all we want to do is just like get on that pendulum and swing back, like everything's gonna be better. No, things will fundamentally be more to the liking of certain like philosophies and policies that we believe in over the next 4 years. But racism is not going anywhere. Like you said, that the way I love the word you use, environmental degradation, all sexism, patriarchy, transphobia, homophobia. None of that stuff's going to go anywhere in these next 4 years. It's just going to be couched differently, right?
Right, right. And the fact is, Martin, we're still, and I talked about this in the last podcast. One of our universal laws is that all power is within. The greatest power is within, not without, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our conditioning has been to look at power being external. And so we're continuing to go to the existing political system for justice and for creating something new. And this system, as it's been designed, and the people within this system are not equipped to produce what we want to do. And so,
Right.
when we talk about this notion of being woke and politically conscious and all those things, that's great to have social and political consciousness, but if it's not tempered with spiritual consciousness, it's not going to produce much. And one of the ways in which we can, a red flag that should come up for any of us to see where there is a lack of spiritual consciousness is how are the individuals or the groups engaged in fighting versus creating. And so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, a thought I had last night, just in terms of, Black people in America, as it stands today, by and large, we don't produce anything that a nation needs as Black people just for ourselves. We're not producing our own energy. We're not producing our own food. We're not educating our own children by and large. And so I think, if we were really operating from a place of integrated consciousness, really marrying our spiritualness with our social consciousness, we wouldn't be so concerned about what those politicians do in DC, because most of them, even the ones that we would deem normal, are operating as egoic sociopaths.
Mm.
If we really start to analyze the policies and how they're rolling, those are policies that are in opposition to the well-being of humanity. And so I and we in the Soul Focus group, myself, you, Mati, our whole team, we think our energy is better served in us not spending so much time fighting against that which exists, but creating the world that we want to see. And so just, again, I just isolated out Black people, but those are things we could, when we have the genius to do it, we have the resources to do it if we were able to pull our resources together.
Right.
But because we've been caught into this egoic trap, we're still kind of like, in many ways, it's like howling at the moon, begging folks who have never, ever had our well in mind to do something for us when it's time for us to begin to do those things for ourselves, right? And create the world that we want to experience.
Yeah, and that's it, right? We're pointing the finger. We're saying they're fucked up. There's something wrong with them. They're horrible people. They get to do the same thing to us, and nobody is creating. Like, I always think of this through the perspective of, being a white person that wants to end racism, that's had this. I've talked on many other podcasts about really, moving from being anti-racist white to being, pro-human solidarity to a new reality of creating and not just being like really talented at being against, being anti, right?
Right.
And, one of the things that I've seen, like, so there's a lot of conversation about Black-led movements right now, right? A lot of conversation in the anti-racist white circles, a lot of stuff around Black-led. And of course, I'm supportive of that. The problem is I think some of the same people that are now adopting that rhetoric, they're in their nonprofits, like the people that are running nonprofits or on nonprofit boards, at their schools for those that are educators, in their governmental agencies for those that work for the government. A lot of these people that are saying we need to have Black-led movements, I don't see those people formulating real-time, real-world plans to have their organizations be Black-led. And what I mean by that is when we talk about we don't have that integration of spiritual consciousness with social consciousness, I don't think it's at most nonprofits. I don't think it's at most schools. I don't think it's at most liberal run institutions. I still think it's white culture that's like setting the tone. So we're still asking people of color, specifically Black, Indigenous, but really all people of color, we're asking them to come into a white cultural organization, and you really have to have some level of assimilation to be successful. We're not really allowing people to fully bring their consciousness and their full selves into play.
Oh, no, absolutely, Martin. And I think, you said a lot. I think that's really true. And as we talk about all these different institutions and systems, for many years, we were saying that we needed to have systemic change, and we do. But the truth
Right.
is, these systems, of course, are made up of people, right? And so the institution reflects the consciousness of the people within the institution. And as it stands right now, we have not done the work as people on ourselves that we need to do to really start to build a new world. And so our collective conditioning, if you go through any of the schools of this nation, if you watch the media of this nation, if you go on to higher education and graduate with whatever level of degree you graduate, you have been certified to replicate white organizational culture. Even those of us who have spent a lot of time trying to understand what white culture has meant and to operate in a different way, we still our subconscious default is back to the norms of white culture. And that's not a reality that we spend a lot of time wrestling with. And when we think about, the egoic nature, often egoic nature of dominant culture, so much of that is centered around conflict and opposition. And so we spend a lot of time across the movement, that a movement that says it's about transformational change. We spend 98% of our time really focused on what we don't want. And you know what, Martin? That's what we keep getting. We keep getting is what we don't want. And
Right.
we've got to begin to shift the scales towards what we do want. Because at some point, we're not going to care what these people over here say about us, what they think about us, whether they accept us, whether they want us in their institution. Fine. That's okay. That's fine. And those aren't even, we don't even want to be in the burning house anymore, like Dr. King talked about. Our energy is going to be towards building our own stuff that's reflective of the humanity that we want to experience, right? Because
Yeah.
we're so caught up in trying to change that which exists, right? And that just shows the limit of what we think is possible when we could be turning our energy. So you look at the education system, right? I remember, Martin, when I worked for an organization, you were involved in this back in the early 2000s. We were doing tons of work around racism in education. We were down,
Mm-hmm.
at the school board doing protests, trying to get superintendents into anti-racist trainings, doing all kinds of stuff. And I look back in the archives of my organization, and the same exact stuff we were asking for in 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5 was the same exact stuff they were asking for in the 1970s. Right. And so
Right.
imagine if we took that energy and instead said, you know what, we're just going to take care of it ourselves. Now, you remember we did a teach-in and we did it for one day, right? Right.
Right.
But the inertia was pulling us back to, that was cool when we celebrated that, but we couldn't sustain that because all the momentum was pulling us back to be in opposition and conflict with something. And as we said in our prior podcast, is that when we're in opposition and conflict with something, we're feeding it and making it stronger. And there's a magnetism of that we haven't broken. We haven't broken the fever of.
That's right. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. And I'm remembering something that you said a long time ago. And you said, we're really good at events and we're not really good at transformational change.
That's right.
Like so much of the movement that you and I were a part of, for so long was an event based movement. And yet, I think so much, I just keep thinking of the word fake, right? Trump popularized the idea of fake news. And one of the things that was just so wild about these last 4 years is everything he did, he like accused other people of, which was kind of amazing, right? However, when the more I think about fake things, I think there's a lot of fakeness on the left too, a lot of fakeness with progressive people. I think there's a fake woke, right? I think there's fake accountability. I was a part of those conversations about what does it mean to be accountable to people of color for so long. And we didn't understand what it was like to be accountable to our true selves. Like there's just so much hypocrisy and fakeness. And I honestly believe that we, being the the left, if you will, or the progressives, or all the different ways we're saying it, we created Trump. We created the MAGA movement. We really did, because we have not. You said this earlier in the first one. We have not been interested in connecting with a whole host of white people that we deem as being less than us, we other, and we're not interested in being with them. So I just want to say that I think what we haven't created, what white folks haven't created, is we haven't created true connection with ourselves and other people, because I don't believe we need to be part of the movement of Black folks and other people of color having self-determination around the creation. I think what we have to do is we have to create an environment of letting go of control. And I think what we have to create as white folks is a revolutionary, evolutionary connection to ourselves and to other white folks to help bring all of us back to our humanity. That's what I think we need to be creating right now.
No, I think you're right, Martin. And um, as you're talking, I'm thinking about there's a lot of debate around whether to get vaccinated or not around the COVID situation. But I'm really thinking about what could we inject into the collective body of humanity to vaccinate ourselves from this dance we've been on for thousands of years. And one of the things I've come to understand is that, an antidote to all this stuff that we're talking about is a forgiveness. Right? And it's not just Martin. It's really ultimately not about forgiving other people. Right.
Right.
It's really about forgiving ourselves and our participation in a way of being that has been an example of our false self, our lower self. Right. And as we begin to forgive ourselves, of course, we will forgive other people. Right. And it's not to be naive, not to forget where other people are right now, but really understanding that we're holding on to multi-generational pain and trauma and energy. Right. And until we shake that off, we're going to keep being magnetized back to the energy that we say we don't want. And once we begin to forgive ourselves and others, that opens a door for us to come back into intimate relationship with ourselves. And as we come back into intimate relationship with ourselves, we come back into intimate relationship with our brothers and sisters on this planet. As we do that, from that place, we would no longer be interested in oppositional politics, if you will. We would only be interested in harmony and creation and creating what we want. I mean, we are here on this planet, Martin. All of us are here to be creators, right? That is our gift. That is our power. But as it stands right now, that notion of how powerful we are, that we can create whatever it is we imagine or think about, we could create right now. This world, again, has socialized us into this egoic way of being where we always see power as external, right? And of course, and we play out these other things that we're talking about. And so the thing that I would want to say to our listeners, and, I'm saying to you, and I'm saying to myself as I'm saying it out loud right now, is the antidote to this madness is beginning to forgive, right? Because we've all of us, every one of us have participated in keeping this current social order in place. None of us are immune. And it might feel nice to not see yourself as part of this equation. But the question, homework question I would give our listeners is to go into your most vulnerable self and ask how you, on a day-to-day basis, participate in the madness of this world. Right? Because if you're harshly judging other people, even though you have all the right politics, if you're controlling other people in ways that are overt or subtle, if you're, trying to be right all the time, if you're criticizing other people, if you're pleasing other people, I mean, the list goes on and on. If you're playing out any of those egoic dynamics, then you're part of the problem too. And we all, you talked about accountability, Martin. The thing that we ought to be talking about is responsibility. We all have to take a new responsibility for the world we experience, because this world is reflective of our collective internal world.
So you mentioned, over the course of these two podcast episodes, you've mentioned two really powerful ideas. And I want to ask you how you see them interrelating. You talked about intimacy and you talked about forgiveness. How do you see forgiveness and intimacy interrelated with each other? And how do you see that as a way out of this? Because I'm still thinking about people who are like, talking about forgiveness, I read something today where part of the plan was to like assassinate people,
Yeah.
like kidnap them and assassinate them. And we
Yeah.
know that that's like on the table. And we might see that in the next few months. I know some people are like, oh, these foo-foo people, like they're talking about forgiveness and intimacy while, people's lives are being threatened. I
Mhm.
really want you to connect those two ideas and then talk about how is that our way out of this.
Well, first thing I'll say, Martin, I can get why people might, in the consciousness in which they're approaching this conversation, might come at it and seeing us as being, esoteric. But, think
Right.
about it. Think about it. What has been our approach so far to people who are, wanting to assassinate people or harm other people, right? By and large, we want to punish them and, do things like that,
Right.
right? But, you know, only hurt people hurt other people, right? And we must be in a profound place of disconnect with ourselves to go and do harm to another person. Because ultimately, not even ultimately, factually, we're doing harm to ourselves. And so when I think about the connection between intimacy and forgiveness, we are walking around, the vast majority of us are walking around this country, this nation as hurt children. We're carrying wounds from our families. We're carrying multi-generational wounds that have never been healed within our families. We're carrying societal wounds of racism, of patriarchy, of poverty, right? And those wounds are part of our collective subconscious programming and individual subconscious programming. And as we walk through the world with those being unconscious by and large around those wounds, we act from those wounds. So that severs our intimate connection with ourselves, because it's just like we have a cloak over us that's keeping us from who we really are, right? And so we're acting from this false place. And so the first step is beginning to forgive, to recognize that that's what's happening, and forgive ourselves for being unconscious, for being unaware of how we're walking through the world, right? Forgive ourselves for not being as courageous as we need to be to see how we've been showing up. And as we begin to forgive ourselves and forgive the harm we've caused ourselves and to others, that opens up the door for me to recognize other people who are causing harm in this world are unconscious as well, right? And so we start to have some grace, not excuse, but grace. And as we begin to forgive ourselves and other people, that starts to restore the loving, intimate connection to ourselves. We start to go into ourselves more. And as we go into ourselves, that allows us to go into other people. And as I start to go into you, into Felicia, into, to other human beings on this planet, I know that from that place, the only thing that we can do together is to create things that recognize our mutual need for harmony, right? What is best for all of us. And so that's my short answer to your question of how the intimacy and forgiveness work together.
Well, it can be an ongoing conversation because that's really powerful. And what I'm really hoping that people can feel, I really hope that people can feel that if what we've been doing hasn't reached the desired result, then what has been missing? And to think that maybe intimacy and forgiveness and the way that they're connected to each other might be what's missing. Because what I really thought about when you were saying, I almost finished your sentence, was humanity, right? What we're really saying is we have not honored other people's humanity because we have not truly been in touch with our own until we are really on that journey of connectedness, all of us, not just white folks, but all of us, until we're really truly on that journey of connectedness, we're going to be ineffectual at everything that we try to do in terms of long-term transformational change. It's just going to be recreating repetitive patterns over and over again. So what I hear you saying, and I agree with you 100%, is that maybe things we've never thought about have been missing from our movements for long-term transformational change. And maybe what's really been missing is that true connection to humanity, which the way you put the connection between forgiveness and intimacy, I thought was powerful as a way to really get back to being fully human with ourselves and each other.
Right. And, I think it's important for us both to say to our listeners is this understanding that we're sharing today comes from a process, of doing this work and making all the mistakes that we made, and not to shame those mistakes by any way, because those were all lessons along the journey for us, right? When we were able to see them as lessons. And, Martin, when I look back at the ways I've treated people over the course of my, 25 years, 30 years of doing this work, saying that I wanted a new loving world, but definitely not showing up like that, treating people with a lot of humanity. Who am I to sit in judgment of someone else who's showing inhumanity right now? And again, it's not an excuse of it. I think none of us should ever get left off the hook from being our most beautiful selves, right? But I have to be able to say, wow, I was in that place. And there's things I'm unconscious of today that hopefully tomorrow I'll have more consciousness around, right? And so if we just continue, and it's a choice. I mean, people have free will. It's a choice where you want to go with this. We are just saying for our process, we have seen that wheel, in the Game of Thrones, they talked about us needing to, someone said you can't change the wheel. We need to break the wheel. We cannot continue to go on this same cycle that we're on, because we're producing the same thing over and over. And if the new world we're talking about creating is not grounded in deep agape love for each other, then what is the point? What is the point?
Right. And ourselves too, right? Like we talked about before,
absolutely,
deep agape love for ourselves. And, I'm just, we're coming to the end of this podcast, and I'm thinking about, for myself, I can look at people who I don't agree with politically or ideologically and say, the way that they try to solve problems is flawed. And then I look at myself, and I've been a conflict addict, my whole adult life. And I've certainly been a conflict addict when it's come to doing anti-racist work. It's one of the reasons why I was so good at being anti, because being anti is conflict based. Right. And, you really have me thinking right now that a lot of what I would say I hate in other people have been things that I have not been able to purge myself of: habits, addictions, outside of the sort of standard, substance types of addictions, but, addiction to righteous anger, addiction to conflict. And I said it earlier, but I know that there are so many times when I make a choice that I don't even really want to make, to keep a conflict going, to express anger, because I feel like if I don't, I lose something. Yes. So if I can't relate and see myself in the people storming the Capitol, like, shame on me. Like, that's not, I'm not going to be helpful.
Bro, I've taken over city council buildings. Yeah, I've done that same kind of stuff, right? Yeah, now, I thought my cause was righteous, right? I thought my cause was righteous, but other folks could surely, and I'm sure did, looked at us in the same way that they're looking at these same folks, right? And Martin, I mean, as you're talking, right? So as we sit in this judgment of other folks, right? If we're not showing up 100% righteous in our relationships, in our relationship to our health, and how we talk to ourselves, right? I would suggest, again, it's not either or, right? But I would strongly suggest that we hit the pause button for a moment and step back and begin to look at ourselves, right? Because everything that we do, every thought that we have, every action we take, even in the shadows of the night, affect everyone else in this world, right? Now, this world, because we have been miseducated spiritually, we tend to disregard the power of our thoughts, but our thoughts are energy, right? Right? Energy is flowing throughout this whole world, right? And we're having effect on the collective experience, and until we start to own that, it's sexy to kind of just focus externally, but we're really missing the mark, it's a sin.
Right. I agree with you so much. And I'm hoping that our listeners are really resonating with this idea. I would say that if you're feeling challenged, lean into that challenge, right? If you're feeling like, if you want to argue some of these points, like, take a minute to reflect on what's coming up for you that you would want to argue. We know, Dustin and I know as well as anybody, we have studied the history of the atrocities that have been done in this country. So for people to be angry and to want to fight, we get. And we also know that we've been in a movement for many, many decades that has not gotten the results we've said we've wanted. That's all we're saying. So sit with whatever's coming up for you, and which is what I'm challenging myself to do now. Nowadays is anytime anything comes up for me around somebody else, I'm trying to really sit with what's coming up for me. What do I feel like I'm losing? You know, when really I'm the only person that I can control. So that's what I'm feeling really strongly right now, Dustin.
No, that's right, Martin. I mean, this time we live in right now is a time that's the universe is asking all of us to grow, right?
That's right.
And giving us an opportunity to create something very, very new. And it's up to us to seize the moment within ourselves and together as a human family.
How is everything we're doing? That's the question to ask yourself in any area where you're not satisfied. How is everything that you're doing working towards growth, right? Everything. So I really want to thank you. I've enjoyed this conversation, both of these, part one and part two. I really have enjoyed the perspective that you brought, Dustin. I want to thank everybody for listening to all of our podcasts. I want to invite you to explore further all the podcasts that we've done on the Android platform and the Apple platform. More platforms to come soon. I want to invite you to come to our website if you never have, soulfocusgroup.com. Look at everything that we're doing there, all the different blogs and everything that's going on. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on our social media sites. We want you to know how much we love you. And we mean that sincerely. Like, we are really practicing what we're talking about, right, Dustin? Like, we love each and every person listening. You
Truly.
know, we don't care whether you disagree with anything we said or everything we said. We love you, and we want to be in good relationship with every single one of you, every single one of you. We want you all to stay safe. We want you all to be well, stay as sane, whatever that means to you, as you can through all of this. And most of all, we want you to stay soul focused.
Peace.
If you wish to support and represent the Soul Focus Group, check out our apparel store at our website, www.soulfocusgroup.com/shop.